Another little update. The original plan was to run the code in a loop and update the time occasionally, but because the update time of the display is so long and the current it takes, at about a milliamp or so, is so high, I've changed the code so that it sits in standby mode or shutdown mode most of the time. That gives a very low standby current, about 3 microamps, and you have to press the button to get the time to update. That's fine, and everything's sort of working. I've got a setup mode where you can set the time and so on. There's only one problem, and that's that the STM32F103 series has a real-time clock, but it's just a seconds counter, which means when the reset occurs, which happens when you come out of standby or shutdown mode, it goes back and resets the date, because the date is held in software. So that's a bit of a problem with the way the code's now operating. So I've had a look around, and it looks like an STM32F410 will actually have a hardware calendar. So the real-time clock holds the hours, minutes, seconds, months, days, years in hardware registers, and with that device it actually manages to store all those registers over a reset, which means it'll work fine coming out of shutdown mode. So that's great. I think you can get it in a 48-pin QFP, which is what I've got on this PCB. There is a slight problem, and it's Chipageddon, I assume. The lead time from Mouser, anyway, the lead time's 45 weeks, and they've got none in stock. And I've had lots of problems buying STM32s at the moment, so I think that's probably going to be the lead time for that part. So what I've decided to do is just leave the code as it is. I mean, it's operating as a clock. It is actually round about 7:19. It's not the 1st of January 1900 or year 2000 though, as the date is actually just rubbish on this at the moment because of that problem. So what I'm going to do is just leave this running as a long-term test for about 45 weeks. See where this is going, and see how well it does actually last on the battery. So I'm going to measure the battery voltage every so often, check the time now and again, and we'll see if it can actually last that period of time. Hopefully at the end of 45 weeks someone will have some stock and I'll be able to build up another board. I think I'll leave this one as it is. I don't really want to rip the chip off, but I'll build another one up, and that one will have the 410 device. And I don't know if the real-time clock library I've got actually supports that device, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'll just write some code to do it if it doesn't. And yeah, we'll see whether it actually can last that long. It should do. I mean, at the moment it's about 3 microamps as it's sitting there, and even with a low capacity 2032, that is a new one, but it's not a real brand name, I don't think. It should last 45 weeks, and I'd be happy with that. I mean, changing a battery once a year, that's not really too much of a problem, but changing a battery every sort of 6 weeks starts to get a bit of a pain, and hopefully it should last a lot longer than 45 weeks. It does depend how often you do that and read the time, because I think I calculated you got something like 6,000 of those updates and you've depleted the battery. So in addition you've got to actually take into account the 3 microamp standby current. So pressing the button 20 times a day for 45 weeks, I think you'd be alright. So it should last, but proof's in the pudding, and we'll actually do the experiment. In the meantime I might look at some cases and so on. I might build another one with an STM32F103 on it, just to get the case sizes and everything. But it looks like if I want date, and I do want date, I'd like to know what day of the week it is and what day of the month it is. It's usually the only way I can find out is to look at my watch. So I do want that on there, which means it's going to have to be a 410. So anyway, let's see how long this lasts.